Nah, so we're back with another edition of Proactive Pragmatism, the review, the Millionaire Mind. And so earlier I posted a video from Gary Vee on the actual podcast page, and you hearted it, bro. So tell me about what it was, because it was relative to money. So tell the listeners what it was about it that you loved about that post, about that video.
So the post you're referring to with Gary Vee was talking about how people buy things that they don't really need. They're just trying to buy to impress people, and then what ends up happening is they end up in a hole. I loved it because it's true, right? Like a lot of people buy things just to wow other people that don't really even care, or you know what I'm saying? For me, in the state I am now, I don't care, man. Like I don't buy anything to make anybody else like happy. I don't really, it doesn't matter to me what someone thinks, whether they like it or not, about anything that I purchase. So, I'm just on my goal to be a millionaire, and I'm not gonna be able to get there, trying to impress people.
Well, that is interesting, because when you talk about so I don't know, man, bro, you never really came across to me as somebody who was ever, just quick to try to stunt on people. Did you have a phase like that, like in college, or not? You always been Shawn.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I remember back in school, my mom used to always buy me Jordans. And, I go to school that first day and everybody, man, those some nice shoes. It does make me feel good. Or when I buy a new shirt and tie and some pants and some shoes or whatever for the school, the kids be like, man, Mr. Hutson, you look on point, And I know, it makes me feel really good. But what they don't know is that I'm not going to the store again until Black Friday. You know what I'm saying? For next year when it's another sale. So it's that fades out probably within a month or two, and then I get the compliments again when I get new clothes. But I'm not about to keep doing this every single week to impress.
Well, and that's real. And Shawn, one of the biggest money savers for me, because that stunt game was real. Everything that Gary Vee, things that I put on the podcast are about being pragmatic and realistic. I think too many of us are not being realistic enough with our funds and where they can take us in the future if we're patient but ambitious. See, Gary Vee teaches patience and ambition at the same time, but he do what you want to do now without the stunt, so you actually build a platform and build something that's worthwhile, that you're passionate about, so you don't go home and cry in those Gucci flip-flops. You know what I mean? And so that's one of the hardest parts. So today we're leading back in with chapter 2. You wanted to talk about your top 5 success factors from the Millionaire Mind. So let's get it. So first off, we're going to start with honesty, right? So what was it about honesty that you thought that tied really, really good into chapter 2?
So I'm going to start off with the first thing that crossed my mind, which is taxes, right? And I laugh because, not everybody's honest with their taxes. They say, they didn't make as much, or let's say you work at a restaurant and you're getting tips, and you don't want to put that on, your taxes, because you don't want the government to have even more than what you really want to give them, But that's just a small example, a small example of honesty. But it becomes a bigger issue when you involve other people in financial honesty, being honest about, how much you really make, and be honest with the people if you can afford, to do certain things, or if you have a particular goal, you're being dishonest with yourself, saying that you're going to go do something when you can't really afford it, and honesty is just one of my biggest, pet peeves. I prefer honesty over somebody just telling me what I want to hear, or specifically a lie, But what about you? What do you think about honesty in relation to finances?
Well, I think, to be honest with you, when it comes down to honesty, I think it's like that. You talked about being real with yourself, right? But here's the problem. If you're not real with yourself and you're not self-aware enough to understand what your goals are, you get tied into other people's goals, right? So you think that you are going to work to make money because you're leveling up, but your bosses and the system knows, and that's why they market the credit cards and all those things to you, because they know that you're going to turn and burn that check as soon as you get it, because people aren't holding on to the bag. Even just a little bit of holding on to money will help you out. Like it was kind of weird. Like somebody I saw, I think they were talking about like credit cards and like department stores, and like I was watching this series on money, and like Shawn, I really had to, you popped up in my mind and I popped up in my mind because I thought about how far we've come from a financial standpoint. Like, dog, I ain't even got no credit cards and I go to freaking Dick's Sporting Goods just to turn them down on the credit card boy. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, if I'm getting that shirt, I'm paying for it in cash. And there's no better feeling than that. But that comes from self, right? Because when you talk about honesty, that's how you get finessed by girls, by guys, by people that you dating, right? You stunt like something else, or you stunt like your parents had you set up, but you can't continuously do that. That's a principle that Gary Vee talks about. You like, one of the biggest issues with millennials right now is we want to stunt and tell our parents no, yet we get income and money and resources from those parents. You want to live in their house and don't want to live by their rules and get mad when they tell you no to something and you ain't got your name on no car note, no nothing like that. And I'm not saying go get a car note, but what I'm saying is sometimes you got to eat the ramen noodles, boy, and be honest with yourself on where you really want to be and where you are right now. Like I've had a few times where I had to, rent in a house that like I didn't, in some random dude's house that I found on Craigslist just to keep my income low. And what you find is when people aren't honest with themselves, they lack the discipline to make the hard decisions and make the hard choices, because they see the new crib that they friend bought, even though they friend is actually crying in the back room on the ground because A, they're not in a happy relationship, B, they don't have the money to sustain that relationship, and C, they kind of bought their way into it by selling somebody a dream. That happens a lot of times in the military, and a lot of times that comes down to discipline. And so as we're talking about discipline, the next success factor is discipline. So what about discipline really hit on, did you really want to hit on?
When it comes to discipline, it's more like consistency. Like that's what I think about when I hit a word discipline.
Say that word again. Say that C word again. Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
Yo, it's consistency. Like I get accolades. I get a lot of accolades, for being very disciplined, but really I'm just being consistent with what I do. It's like, if I do this every single day, it looks like I have a lot of discipline. In my mind, I don't think of it as discipline. It's just I just want to stay on top of whatever I'm doing and be consistent. I'll give you an example. Staying on my budget, right? So at the beginning of every month, I put my numbers into the Every Dollar app by Dave Ramsey, right? And this is $0 budget. And it's like, you got to stick to this like number, right? You can do whatever you want, but just stick to the specific number. I'll give you an example. Let's say my number for going out to eat is $200, right? So this is not even counting groceries. This is just going out to eat, once a month with my girlfriend Zora, right? And I stay on top of that budget, man. Like as soon as I swipe, every single time I'm putting it in my budget, right? And I'm letting her know, like, all right, we got $40 more this week. We got $40 more, and then we that's it. All right. And it goes back to the other point of being honest too, right? Like I want to be disciplined, but I have to be honest too about my budget. So that way I can stay on top of everything. What about you?
So
what do you
true.
think about? What
Well,
do you
I
think?
think I've had to. So today, Shawn, I I closed one of my bank accounts, and one of the reasons why I did it was because for flexibility purposes, I just wasn't able to monitor the dollars like how I wanted to. It was a bank account that I had set up because I was leaving overseas and I needed something that was more formidable, than what I was working with. But then, like, I found out that like T-Mobile came out with a bank account, right? So with T-Mobile, I get discounts on my bills, plus they get 4% up to like $3,000. So people tap into that, you know what I'm saying, and get 4% on your money. You just got to make 10 purchases. So one thing that I did was if I was going to buy some cheap stuff on Amazon, I was doing it that way, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was getting big savings checks, it was just easy to slide over to the digital account. But like when I was overseas, like Wood Forest, just it wasn't really working for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I'd make a purchase and it was a legitimate purchase and they were doing a legitimate job, but it just didn't work for me. You know what I mean? And so getting back on the, putting away, so as much as I've gone through the baby steps, like I still kind of hold on to certain principles because of how my career and things work out and like how, I'm going to manage the payments and different stuff that happens. Right. And so, but I still keep the principle of trying to, keep the savings board together. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, if I only have to manage 2 accounts that I can slide back and forth, this is, basically my checking. And the other one that's a checking is going to be like a savings because they're going to give me 4% on my money. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And at the baseline is 1.5%, but it's still better than no percent. You know what I mean? And so a lot of people, it's hard to grasp that, but it also, I get the instant updates. This is going on because it's an app, right? So now I can pull it back and make better decisions. Like, to be completely honest with you, bro, like I would have blown money. Like if I was, shout out to y'all inviting me out last weekend. But I had a couple of things set up, saying, talk to some breezies and do, different stuff. But like my mind, I had to think when and that's the thing about it is like even with discipline, we're gonna talk about community here in a second. So when you talk about community, that also ties to your friend groups. What was very, very powerful is me aligning myself with you and Zora. Even though I don't follow a lot of the stuff that y'all say with the savings and the discount, it still keeps you ripe in the head when you got those people just saying those little things. Because even if it doesn't register in that moment, it can register to something else, right? Because you hear the numbers and how y'all splitting them up. I mean, the dollars, I mean, I could pull up the message right now. It was like, yeah, $22.75 for this with the, with the calculations with the, if you want to do this, the split gonna be like this. And I'm like, that's the energy that I need. I just don't, it's just, maybe it may not be right in the moment, but that energy is life-saving and it keeps your discipline together. That community helps you out because I know that I got a team. Like y'all the team, like y'all like family to me, you know what I'm saying? And so in that family type situation, it's like, hey, if I'm doing this, hey, Shawn, hey, Zora got some type of what she know about the street over there with the, you know what I'm saying? That saves you so much time and money and effort when you have friends and that type of community that really helps you out. And a lot of times we got to create our community. And so when we talk about community, what pops up in your mind?
Man, like just keeping the right people around. And like I can take this back to college days, right? I remember my freshman year. Like I hung out with people that loved to party, right? And I was never the party type of person, but we in college, of course, I'm gonna check some things out. But after that first year, me choosing, the party and not really studying and doing my work at the last minute, my GPA is a 2.08, right? I had to choose a different community, right? I'm like, I'm not gonna be at EIU. I'm not gonna be able to be at this community. So I switched it up, got a roommate. I purposely chose a roommate who would be on top of their grades, right? Shout out to Dante. Man, he's a straight A student. I'm like, Dante, you gonna be my roommate, man. I need you as my roommate. I need somebody to stay on top of me to make sure I do my work. And man, like I got the first time in my life, I got a 4.0. The first time in my entire life, I got a 4.0. I'm like,
my God.
I'm like, man, this is what happens when you change your community. Just simply choosing a different roommate and decide not to party and hanging out with international students. That's on top of it.
Yeah, well, and that's 100 all day. Like when you talk about that roommate scenario, like I got boys that I love to death, but I know we'd kick it to death too because we was roommates back in the day, and I can't. And they in a different tax bracket now, right? Like I could be in that tax bracket, but right now I'm practicing massive patience because I got different goals. I want to pay off these student loans and be completely done with them. So I know in order to get there faster, I keep my rent low. Like, you know, some of the females, you know, the lady friends, you know, they probably like this place small, but like this is only the beginning, sweetheart. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And you got to hold that ego back too, because that's a part of community as well. It's like knowing who you can keep at a distance and knowing who can be in your circle. You know what I'm saying? Like it's some girls, like some ladies, I can only go out on a date with them like once a month because I like to treat them well. You know, I'm like, you know, I like to have good experiences, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm building, like I'm a single man and like I'm about to, you know, deploy again soon. So I'm like, I can't really wrap myself into anything too heavy. And it sucks because it hurts the heart and the mind, you know what I'm saying? But I start thinking, you know, farther in the future, right? Like, who do I want to be? Who is the man? If I decide to get married and settle down and, you know, do the whole picket fence or maybe a loft, maybe, you know, maybe I get a what do you call it, a little penthouse or whatever it is, right? That future, what does that look like? I'm gonna need somebody who's humble. I'm gonna need somebody who's patient. I'm gonna need somebody who's frugal and, you know, who understands that and who can be a pivotal spouse. Not only that, you know, one that inspires me with that femininity element that I need in my life. Because, you know, Shawn, we talked about this a while ago, like how I'm like a hard charger. And, you know, I was like very intense on the podcast. I still got that fire. It's just control. Because that controlled energy, that controlled strength is everything, especially when you budgeting, when you know what I'm saying, it's trying to stay disciplined. When somebody talk out the side of their neck to you the wrong way, and you know you could do damage, but you can also do damage to the rest of your life. And so, you know, when it comes to that, like I want to make sure that like I'm getting the right spouse. You know what I'm saying? Like when I decide to make that move, like I can't settle for just anything right now. I got to have somebody who is aligned with my purpose, you know, and when they're aligned with that purpose, you know, getting along with spouses is very, very huge because a lot of guys gonna set themselves up for failure. You know why? Because their girlfriend's dad made a lot of really good money and their daughter is driving an Audi or a Benz or something like that. And we know as men, we have to become. As men, we have to become. And so that means I can't be like Pops now if I want to be like Pops later for our children and for us. You know what I'm saying? That's that delayed gratification. And the problem is our generation isn't tied into, you know, they don't understand delayed gratification. And how we kind of started to get there was we was like, I'm tired of living like this. So I'm going to delay this gratification so I can do other things that I want to do later. So, you know, getting along with spouses. Let's speak on it. What you got?
Well, I'm new to this one. I mean, I've only had 2 girlfriends in my entire life, so, but I'm gonna assume that if you're getting along with your spouse, like everything should be able to fall into place.
Well, and that's real. Okay, so I was talking about what book was I reading? There was another book that I was reading that spoke on spouses and the different people that they chose to put in their lives. But I think the interesting part about the spouse conversations is that conversation starts early. As a generation, one thing that we've forgotten was courtship. Because you got a lot of guys, and you know, ain't nothing wrong with it, but they've only had 2 girlfriends. Because they came up in a generation where they moms, you know, like things were different. Like the opportunities weren't as equal back in the day. So people would get the spouse, they would get the husband and the wife. But now we're coming into a generation as males where, you know, a lot of ladies are out performing and making way more money. Like the trades have kind of gone to the wayside. You know what I'm saying? Like everything is very, you know, like in an awesome way, but it's, you know, it's one of those things where they make quite a bit of money. And if you don't have the right attitude, one thing that I've always gravitated towards you about and like I've always been pivotal with you about it, and just loved about you was you a man no matter what your girl make. You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, having that strength and that discipline and that honesty with yourself to be self-aware enough to say, you know what, like that's okay. But that also comes with a trade-off. Don't be out here breaking your back, bending over backwards. Just because she says the garage needs to be fixed, that doesn't mean you have to fix the garage to kill yourself. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean like we're in an age of opportunity where we can make a lot of money a lot of different ways. We ain't got to hit the coal mine. You know what I'm saying? Like our pops did. So at the same time, that's, getting along with spouses is like having the other person like, I got your back. This is what we planning out. This is what we gonna do. This is how we gonna set up the budget. And Dave Ramsey talks about this all the time. You want somebody that's down with your budget plan, somebody that's in your price range. A lot of brothers out here stepping outside of their price range, and that price range ain't necessarily, I don't believe it's necessarily physical. A lot of it is just mental. You know what I'm saying? Like there are going to be opportunities that she has that you might have to be like, I can't make it on the budget. And they have to understand that like, my man ain't got it. So either, you know what I'm saying? Like, but I ain't gonna hold it over his head. We just probably not gonna do that. You know what I'm saying? But that takes a lot of patience, right? That takes a lot of delayed gratification to say, okay, maybe we don't need an RV. Maybe we don't need a house yet until we can actually afford it. And it's only a certain percentage of our income.
I love that you bring that up because I was actually having that conversation with Zora. So anytime we had conversations, and this is getting along with spouses, I like to because I'm a teacher, right? We have chart paper to help make things stick to the kids. So I actually have like a ton of chart paper in the house, and I use the chart paper to help us understand one another, right? So like just like you said, like maybe we're not ready for a house yet. So let me see. It'll be on this side. We were talking about how like, we might have to rent for a year. And then the next year, I want to get the multi-unit apartment. And then a year after that, we can get your house, right? And she was like, well, what if we can get the house next year, right? And then we're having these conversations. And she's like, well, you can still get your multi-unit apartment. And just, bro, it's that partnership and communication, the open communication is key, man.
Well, and that's huge, and that's a whole other level of conversation. And it's interesting because a lot of people be trying to skip levels in that spouse conversation. They don't include the other person in there in that conversation, from an economic standpoint. You know what I mean? Like they just, I'm about to go do this. I think dating has also become ultra hard because as of late, what I'm finding is a lot of wonderful young ladies are buying houses, but out of feeling, like out of emotions, like not like they're like, oh yeah, I was bored, so I bought a house. And I was like, wait, what? Because I'm a Ramsey baby. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, yeah, okay. They was like, well, it's the same price almost as I'm renting. Then you realize how much they renting, and you like, you paying $1,400 in rent, $1,900 in rent.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And even if you move that to a house payment, now you got even more headaches with the house.
Exactly, because you got a maintenance.
Well, and
taxes.
And here's the thing: is the scariest part sometimes is they got the pops for maintenance. Oh, well, my dad will tell me what to do. I'm like, that sounds great. And that sounds wonderful. And I'm glad, baby girl, that he is in your life. But at the same time, that man I think people don't have a realistic understanding of life. That man may not be there to walk you through those things. And then, and I see like a lot of, it's very interesting. It's like this like go and do mentality, the fear of missing out. So a lot of people have FOMO. They have fear of missing out. So instead of tightening down on what they need to do and what like the process and figuring out step, right? They just go and do. And then they wrapped up in something they can't get themselves out of. And then they start making poor decisions. And then like a lot of, right now, like the United States is going through a drug problem. You know what I'm saying? People popping pills, and because they're depressed and they're sad because they're in debt, because they was trying to prove people that didn't really even care about them. And so the other thing is that work ethic is not necessarily there. Like, they're not working harder than most. They don't have a plan. They're late for work a lot of the times. You know what I'm saying? Like, always running late, but it's cool. Ha ha he. It's like there's this culture of, oh, play hard, then work hard and go ask and beg for extra hours. And that's kind of been the hardest thing to me, is like being at FedEx and watching drivers, like, they got the check, they got the STEMI boy, they got all that stuff. And all of a sudden now they're anti-work. You know what I'm saying? They was working harder than most people in the beginning, but now they leaning on them overtime hours. And one thing that you never want to do is lean on overtime hours. Always benchmark at the lowest common denominator. And that's what I start doing with my budget. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, everything is budgeted out. If I got to move something or slide something, I'm cool. But at the same time, I'm like, what's the minimum amount I can get paid that week? After taxes. Not pre-tax, after tax. And then how much, like, literally my savings plan, the first thing that I said, because Dave always talks about pay yourself first, right? And so the first thing on my line is how much I'm going to save. Whether it's going to be this amount or this amount. If it's this amount, I'm going to save this much. If it's this amount, I got, that I literally got them column together. That's my savings line. And then from there, I budget out the rest of it. And I keep it on my phone. Like, I take pictures of it and all that stuff. And like, I make little adjustments, but I make sure I stay on that, because that really gives me that financial peace to know that I'm moving in the right direction. And that'll change your whole life, because that'll give you that energy to work harder than most. And so when it comes to working harder than most people, what do you see? What do you see the playing field looking like when we talk about working harder than most?
Man, I used to say this all the time in the classroom. I'm like, all you got to do is try. I feel like a lot of people don't really even try. They just there. Like, some people don't even show up. Let's start there. Some people don't even show up to do what they're supposed to do. It is the other people who do show up do the bare minimum. I'm like, yo, if you just do what you're supposed to do, right? You're already harder, like working harder than most. Like, you're already going to be successful because you're doing what you're supposed to do. So if you put in the extra energy, just that little bit of extra energy, just to go a little bit harder, now you look like, you're the best person on campus. But all you're really doing is trying, because most people don't even try.
Man, and that's so real. And you know what? That's not even your classroom, dog. Like, even so outside of your classroom, like, classrooms like that have bred our society now. Because they want to stunt, they want the iPhone boy, they want all these different things, they want the watch, they want the, you know what I'm saying? But like, society has made it so easy to where they can finance all of this stuff and pretend like they made it. Like, somebody's like, oh, I see you got the watch, boy, but they don't understand the sacrifice that I made to work harder than most. When the Army said, hey, we need you to deploy, I'm like, let's go, because I need this bread to pay off and move forward with my life. So that way I'm not chained to thinking about, like, man, how I'm gonna make child support this month. You know what I'm saying? That's a responsibility. So now I gotta show my daughter what working hard looks like and putting in the work, because she also don't get everything. You know what I'm saying? We kind of budget it out. I send a little extra money, make sure, she's straight, whatever. But it's kind of one of those things where, like, and that's the hardest part. Like, here's the thing. Once I embraced that I was weird and different than other people, that's when I started to grow. That's when I started to say, forget it. That's why, like, everything it's like the stars aligned when we met and you came on in my inbox talking about, why don't you put it on YouTube? Because I've been checking it on Spotify. Because at that point, I was like, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? Somebody can listen in and it could possibly change their life. And that type of energy right there, working harder than most. At the end of the day, when you're able to go to sleep and you didn't work harder than most people, you really sleep in peace. A lot of people got anxiety because their anxiety is telling them there's something that they need to be doing that they're not doing. There's something that they could possibly be accomplishing. But instead of going the hard route, they take the easy route to be like everybody else, to be like the Joneses. And see, here's the thing: is there was a quote by I can't remember. It's a famous football player, but he said, when you play good, they pay good. and that's something that, you know what I'm saying, it's never changed. But you got to think about it. Maybe it's not paid today. Maybe it's paid in 10 years. But 10 years will be here before you know it. Dog, we just got 10 years ago was like high school. You know what I'm saying? Like it's 2021. You feel me? And so it's one of those things where like we've gotten to a society where like they're afraid and scared to outwork other people. And one thing I recently been doing is, you know, you have this way of talking to people and addressing people and, you know, stuff like that. So I've been starting to, like, when I want to do some podcast edits, I'll go into public places, you know what I'm saying, like a little lounge, and just chop it up a little bit just so I can be uncomfortable and become more comfortable with the interaction. Because it's not like I don't like people. It's just like being different. You just teach yourself how to move kind of around people, you know what I mean? Instead of like interacting with them. Like you've seen me in public, you know what I'm saying? Like I can have a good conversation. The problem is a lot of times I don't want to. But it's not about what you don't want to do. It's about putting the work now and understanding your why and where you want to be. And it just really sucks to see people, you know what I'm saying, like not do the minimum. Like, dog, all you got to do is do your minimum job every day. You ain't got to be me. You ain't got to be Shawn. You ain't got to be nobody else. You ain't got to be a superhero. You ain't got to be, you know, whatever. Just do the minimum and you're going to get by. So that means if you do like +1 sometimes, you're going to be good. Like shout out to AJ Walsh, because she had a graphics class where like her grading scale was you either got a -1, a 0, or a +1.
You talking about Professor AJ?
Yeah.
I remember.
And it was like, it was weird to a lot of people, but like when I talked to her, I understood it. Because she started you off with a 100. And in real life, you kind of start off with a 100. And we all take our minuses, you know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, you can still end up with a 70. The problem is people take those small moments for granted. They discard the micro because they're trying to solve the macro. And the macro, either it's going to solve itself or it's never going to get solved. Like, I'm not saying don't be proactive in your life and like try to help people and motivate them and do stuff like that. But like you start with the micro and you create a movement. And movements are extremely powerful. It's just like, you probably understand. You start with one kid sitting down and talking to him. Now all the other kids know that they can come to you. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's the same way in the military. Like they literally got a book for everything. And nobody expects you to be perfect. I think the problem is a lot of times like people make certain ranks and they feel like they need to be perfect. Like, nah, dog, I need you to tell me I don't know. So that way I can go find the answer and then come back to you and tell you what the answer was, and we can talk about the answer, and then we can both learn and grow. Like that was the hardest part, like about trying to, you know, work hard. Like I'm not comparing myself to other people, you know what I'm saying? But working hard makes you stand out and it feels weird. So all of y'all people out there that, you know what I'm saying, y'all working hard, keep working hard. Don't let other people's, you know what I'm saying, chakras and energies and vibes like affect you and who you want to be. Because I don't know, Shawn, you may be able to contest, you know, speak on this, but when I was in high school, I thought that was everything. Everybody that was like super popular, and this ain't shade, but like I had to become and I had to make myself. And a lot of people stepped up and helped me out and helped me get there. But the popular people back then, they not the popular people now. You know, and you on the phone right now with the kids, you know what I'm saying? Explain to them young Thunder cats, if they you know get to a point where they feel like they're an outcast, embrace that outcastness. And if you poor right now, then that shows you what you don't want to be later.
Yeah.
And that's super powerful, because later you can get the haircut. You all this right here, like Shawn, I was a goofy dude. I was skinny. I ain't had no nice clothes. I ain't had nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like my shoes was talking to me, bro. Like my dad wasn't going to near no Jordans. But later, you know what I'm saying? You get the right tools and you stay the course. You can buy the fly stuff, and you can do it debt free. So I kind of went on a little TED talk rant there. You like, but so. Did we cover, you know, kind of your top 5 pretty well? The top honesty.
Yeah,
the discipline, the community, get along with spouses, and working harder than most people.
Mm-hmm.
You got anything else before we wrap up this last episode of chapter 2?
It was one more thing that I wanted to talk about. It was my favorite part in the book, man. Like this is the most memorable thing in the Millionaire Mind.
Mm-hmm.
So it was on page 40. It's called "The Good Salesman Have an Edge," and it starts off talking about how the author of the book, he's a professor, and he has a student that doesn't show up to class, and put in the bare minimum effort. And he was told to do a paper, and he turned it in, but he did the bare minimum. He gets a 0. And basically the student's like, hey, let me give one more try. What you want me to do? He came up to the house. He said, listen, man, don't just take the F. And he like, no, tell me what you need. Right. So, and the story goes on, basically they become partners, and because he's like, tell me what you need, so that I can get my A, right? Or a passing grade. Like, just tell me what's up. So he like, all right, listen, I got this conference coming up, and I need, to sell something to this particular guy, right? So the student was like, all right, I got you. So the student go off, he make a phone call, find out, the man is married, and he asking about, the lady's pants size, and I think they was like, she was like she was like a 12 or something like that, or a type 10, I believe it was. So he was like, all right, I got you. So he go off and buy some pants and take out the stitching, right? Or he makes some pants, and then he put a size 8, even though the person is really a size like 12, 10, right? So he make a bunch of these pants, give it to the wife, and then put his professor's name, right? He's gifting it from his professor to the wife. So he said he goes to the conference, and that's all the man could talk about is how his wife got these pants that she loved delivered to her. That's a size 8, right? So the man ends up like giving him, the money or whatever that he needed in order, to move on in his business. And the reason why, this particular story stood out to me so much was because, one, the guy basically said, hey, I need to pass your class. What can I do to make it happen? Right? He didn't just sit there and fail. Number 2, he did law number 7 and 48 Laws of Power, another book that should be read. Right? Rule number 7 is get others to do the work for you, but always take the credit. So basically, the professor told him what he needed, right? And that kid didn't take the credit. He gave the credit to the professor to make him look good. And then the third thing was another law number 32. It says play the people's fantasies. So play the people's fantasy. Well, this young lady, the wife, obviously she tells people that she's a certain size, but she really a certain, other size, on the heavier side. But he played to her fantasy, right? So that his wife would be happy, right? Because he knew if I can get the wife on the team, I can get the husband on the team, which is the actual target, right? And I mean, bro, I learned so much from this book. A lot of people talk about how
well, bro, and then there's another tenet: never outshine the master.
Never outshine the master.
Because he also made the professor look good. Go ahead, though.
But yeah. Like a lot of people talk about, you're only using this book to manipulate people. Well, at the end of the day, if you want to get what you want, it's some form of manipulation somewhere. Like I manipulate my students to do their work, right? Like
my daughter, look. My daughter manipulates me to get what she wants, like to eat. Like babies manipulate people because they're hungry.
Right, they cry.
So like people, it's very interesting. But I think a lot of times it reflects not necessarily a darkness, but it reflects a part of reality that people just refuse to face because life has become very, very easy. Like, and we actually might have to do, you know what I'm saying? We might have to talk about our top 5, 48 laws of power in the next review. So, you know what I'm saying, listeners, you know what I'm saying, look out for that one, because we probably gonna go in on that one, because it's been a couple years since I read the 48 laws of power, but it's always a good read. But
It is.
that also ties into the art of seduction, and then it also ties into the laws of human nature, right? So like all these things they transcend all those things, but it makes so much sense, right? Sell to your strengths, find out a way to turn that passion into money, and then turn that money into the millionaire mind. You know what I mean? And that's where all the strengths are. Like, you can do a lot of things in this world, but it takes the ability to critically think. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about education, is all of our educational experiences we just talked about forces people to critically think about what they want to accomplish. And that's super powerful. Like, I remember reading, I was like, okay, yeah, I remember that, that section. And that was super powerful, because he also, like a lot of great inventors, like the lady that invented Spanx, she did a very, very similar thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, she was like, ooh, what would make this, you know what I'm saying, make women feel slimmer and stuff like that. Like, there's a whole world out there, you know what I'm saying, of women's products that are really selling a fantasy. But it's not even a bad fantasy, because it makes people feel good. And when you look good, you play good. When you play good, they pay good. So that's big facts. So we're gonna if you got any more on that one?
That's it, man. That's all I wanted. I had to end chapter 2 on that story.
Nah, that's real. So, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate y'all tapping into, another edition of the review, and tapping into the Millionaire Mind. Stay tuned to the next episode. On the next episode, we will be talking about getting into chapter 5, vocation. So stay ready, stay willing. We're gonna tap in. So we appreciate y'all. Shawn, you know what I'm saying? You got any words of wisdom before we end this?
Stay up on your reading. Read this book.
Big facts. Knowledge is power. All right, y'all. Peace.